One of the biggest defenders of the Acolyte was always Paul Tassy, the new Scott Mendelsohn over at Forbes, and now that the series has been cancelled, he naturally chimed in and sided with all the other activists, who argue that Disney absolutely should flush $200 million down the drain on another season of the Acolyte that hardly anyone will see. So let's see Tassy try to rationalize why it would be in Disney's best interest to do this. Let's dive in. The piece, titled "The Acolyte Cast Speaks Out About Its Cancellation and They're Not Amused," reads, "Fans continue to rally to try to save the Acolyte from cancellation by Disney," which has now spread to a number of media outlets writing pieces about how this was a mistake by Disney. Disclaimer, I am one of those media outlets, says Paul Tassy. Here's another disclaimer, this time from me. Not a single one of those outlets has thus far come up with even one good reason why Disney should invest another $200 million on this. Instead, their reasoning tends to boil down to that we can't let the wrong people win, and diversity and representation is so incredibly important that we in the media are very happy for Disney to flush all that shareholder money down the drain for the cause. Criticizing the cancellation though, the piece continues. The move both gives into a celebrating anti-woke toxic fanbase, while also demonstrating that Disney has no ability to commit to expanding meaningfully outside the increasingly stale Skywalker era. And here then, we see the beginnings of Tassy's argumentation. 1. He doesn't want to give what he considers a toxic fanbase a win, even though what he is referring to are the normal fans. As I've already established in our previous video, it's the fans of the Acolyte that are the true toxic fans. But on top of that, Tassy also criticized Disney for essentially having failed with Star Wars, which is true. What he isn't saying though is that message-infused garbage like the Acolyte is the very reason why. The piece continues. Now even the cast members are chiming in about the Acolyte's cancellation with reactions ranging from bewilderment to clear annoyance. The first is the diplomatic but confused Lee Jung-jae, one of the stars of the first season who was, spoilers, killed off in the finale. Even if he wasn't returning, he wanted the show to live on and was stunned it wasn't going to. Personally speaking, I really loved Leslye's writing. I thought that she was a great writer and director who was very talented in the storytelling, as well as creating characters and creating meaningful structures within the story. So I was actually personally really looking forward to watching a season 2 with her at the helm. Honestly, I am hoping that maybe there could be changes in the future, because you never know what's going to happen. So on a personal level, I really hope we could get to see further stories of Leslye's second season. That, of course, is the diplomatic answer. On a personal level, I think he hates what was done to his character, but at a professional level, he is smart enough to know that whatever he says here will be read by his next prospective employer, so remain diplomatic above all, and that's what he did here. But then the article moves on to someone who actually would have been a part of Season 2. Then there's Rebecca Henderson, who didn't just play Vanestra on the show, she's also married to Leslye Headland, its showrunner. In other words, we have gotten to the opinion of the bald green chick with the lightsaber whip she uses as a fly swatter. You know, the one who is universally considered to be the single worst actor on the show, and by a wide margin at that. But I'm sure she was cast because she was the best for the role, so let's not even contemplate anything else. About her, the story reads. While she did not comment directly, she posted a number of stories clippings, things like Rolling Stone's story about Star Wars being able to survive its worst fans, and a tweet about which part of the fan base Disney listened to, and how Disney should stop caving to pressure and stand your ground. So in other words, she didn't say anything in words, but rather reposted articles and social media posts bemoaning that Disney and Lucasfilm listened to the audience. You know, the audience that the media has dubbed toxic. No word on whether or not there were any instances of flying plates or shoes in the Headland and Henderson household. But here, Tassy has to try to maintain some semblance of journalistic integrity, so he is forced to throw some reality into the mix. There is no indication that Disney cancelled The Acolyte because it was being review bombed and yelled about on YouTube. Tassy of course doesn't mention the positive review bombing and completely fraudulent reviews from the entertainment media complex, but he does move on to the real issue at hand. Again, the ultimate answer is likely cost versus viewership. In this, he is of course 100% correct, although his own ideology precludes him from accepting this and moving on, which is something that the sensible Forbes contributor Eric Kane did, and he wrote a companion piece titled "The Very Obvious Reason Disney Cancelled The Acolyte. It wasn't toxic dude bros." His piece reads, while some outlets want to paint the cancellation as a win for toxic dude bros in the fandom, as if no women could possibly have disliked The Acolyte, and others are saying that its failure will cause Disney to avoid trying new things, I think the real culprit is twofold. The show was far too expensive and did not draw big enough numbers to justify the cost, and the show was far too expensive and did not receive enough critical acclaim and widespread fan support. Both of which, I might add, boils down to that its very limited viewership did not even remotely justify its massive production cost. And that's really all there is to it. But of course, Paul Tassy, the more deranged Forbes contributor, wants Disney to ignore this financial reality, so let's move away from Kane's sensible article and step back into the derangement of Paul Tassy. There was zero reason the show needed to cost $180 million in the first place, and there should have been a way to get the second season to both resolve plotlines and ensure the concept of High Republic live-action content doesn't die.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
Tassy may not realize this, but his point about unresolved plotlines is actually a critique at Leslye Headland. And when it comes to ensuring the survival of the High Republic, my question is, why? Tons of great series that had 10 times the fan support of this series have been cancelled in the past, and I don't recall journals like Tassy complaining about that, so why should this series get extra privileges? What is more, the audience has voted against the High Republic both on Disney+, in books, and in the comics. So where does this need to ensure it doesn't die come from? Not from the audience, that's for sure, because they've made it clear that they don't want it. The only ones who do are the true toxic fans and the likes of Paul Tassy, who continues, and the end result was still the toxic fans celebrating anyway, even if they weren't the driving force behind the cancellation. That's still the message it sends, however, even to its own cast, which Disney did nothing to publicly support in the midst of mass harassment as the show aired. And again, here we have these claims of mass harassment against the cast, but I don't see any evidence of that. Where are the receipts? And secondly, if there was any kind of harassment, what kind of support was he expecting? That Disney would order Ewan McGregor to do another car video because that worked so well the last time? If Disney truly wanted to support their actors, well then they had to fire Kathleen Kennedy, fire Leslye Headland, and then let actual creatives who love Star Wars and wants to tell great Star Wars stories that celebrates its own legacy rather than subvert it, do what they do best. Because then there would never have been any backlash against the cast or anyone else in the first place. I mean, do you see any backlash against the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian? No? Well, that would be because unlike the people behind The Acolyte, they didn't set out with the intention of drawing in Antifa at the expense of the built-in Star Wars audience. That just might have something to do with the fan reaction. Tassy continues by saying, I do not think it's entirely impossible Disney reverses course here. Stranger things have happened, and if everyone from actors to media to fans are angry enough about this, they may take notice. So that's his message then. If the media and the few fans this series has, most of whom are toxic, all scream loud enough, that might convince Disney to take out $200 million in cash and burn them, as there's about the same return on investment in doing that as there would be on making another season of The Acolyte. I register that, like everyone else championing another season, Tassy has failed to produce a business reason why Disney should do so. As such, if Disney were to give in to this pressure from the media, shareholders should sue the board for dereliction of their fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders. Tassy continues though. After all, Season 2 was supposed to be spooling up as recently as a month ago. The toxic set of fans that would be upset are angry about everything all the time anyway, so who cares about them? But again, the ones that journos like Tassy label as toxic are in reality what remains of the Star Wars fanbase. So what he is saying here is screw the Star Wars fans, who cares about them? He then concludes with, Disney is silent. They were silent during the harassment that none of us on the outside ever saw. They've been silent about the cancellation. Hopefully they won't stay silent after listening to the non-screaming voices about a better way forward here. But what might a better way forward look like? What do you think Disney will do here? Continue to drive their built-in audience away with more stuff like The Acolyte? Or stand by their conviction and not renew a series that has done nothing but incur great losses, damaged the brand, and driven away tenfold as many Disney Plus subscribers as have signed that stupid renewal petition? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.